Or Nick, let's talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes as spring practice has kicked off where it's well underway. We're starting to hear news about the most important position on this team, the most important battle. That's the quarterback position. I think we've got some good updates on this quarterback battle going forward for the Buckeyes. We'll dive deep into that here on the other side. But first, I'm Andrew. That's Nick. And this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, great update on the quarterback battle. We got some articles talking about what has been going on so far. Let's get on into it. We can talk more about it on the other side. This is from over on Essentially Sports, and it says, with many seeing the 19-year-old Saiyan, talking about Julian Saiyan, as a presumptive starter, May said, you wouldn't cookie cutter Julian Saiyan and Lincoln Kinholtz. They are not the same kind of quarterback, really. When you get right down to it, but it does finally come down to running the plays and throwing accurately. Very true. He says, but who's the better athlete in this three-man race? Well, May has his own answer that deepens the dilemma. From watching them over the years, I mean, probably Lincoln Kinholtz, but Tavian St. Clair can run with anybody, but he prefers to stand there and throw the ball. And we know Julian Saiyan, I mean, the Elite 11 and all that kind of stuff. He definitely prefers to stand there and deliver the ball from the pocket, but he's shown in practice and stuff he can scoot. Sounds like the Ohio State Buckeyes, they've got some interesting ones. One guy's a little bit different than the other here. Kinholtz a little bit more mobile. Haven St. Clair and Julian saying they can, but they decide that they want to be pocket passers at times as well. I think there's some interesting updates on the quarterback position here, Nick. Curious what your thoughts are, and I know you've got a little bit more on this later down the line, but before we get to you, Ohio State fans, in the comment section below from this little snippet right now, what do you want from your quarterback of this team? Do you want a more mobile quarterback? Do you want a guy who scrambles in and out the pocket, maybe can make some plays with his legs? Or do you want a guy who's willing to stay in the pocket and make the big throws down the field? Let us know, what are you preferring? You've had multiple different styles over the years. Which do you prefer? Let us know in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about these latest updates for Ohio State?
I think it's very interesting because you have the reporter there mentioned, and he talks about how Kinholtz looks like the better athlete. I think that's almost an indication. And look, as I played small time college football, and he wanted to play FCS, and there is this sort of interesting dynamic, especially when you go through practice, is that the quarterback, if there's a quarterback battle, the guy who is the better athlete, the guy who's making plays with his legs, who's making things happen in practice, the team does sort of galvanize around him a little bit, especially when it's a veteran like Lincoln obviously is, been around the block a long time. I think the fact that Kinholtz is looking like the better athlete in spring practice, I think that's actually a really good indication about his position and his QB battle, that he really is in the thick of it. Saying is the favorite, but when you break down what's going on, and we got some comments. In fact, let's throw up our second half of the article here to just talk about it. It actually looks like he's in a good position to maybe come out on top. According to this latest report, as far as general preference goes, Saiyan holds the reins to be the potential starter in 2025. He's the hype with an insane high school production, completing 72% of his passes. Even Will Howard touts him as one of the most accurate quarterbacks, but five-star true freshman Tavian St. Clair has emerged as his $1 million threat who could steal that QB1 spot. Here's the critical part. And now Lincoln Kinholtz is finding his spot in the conversation, which only heightens Ryan Day's difficult decision. Here's the most important part. Nevertheless, Ryan Day is a clear description for whoever gets that nod under center. The number one job for the quarterback is being the hardest working guy in the building. There shouldn't be any question. He declared, like, if someone says, who is our hardest working guy, it should be the quarterback. If it's somebody else, that's a problem. They should be the first one in the building and the last one to leave. Notice he didn't say the quarterback has to be the most accurate. Doesn't have to be the guy with the best arm talent. Doesn't have to be the guy with the most hype. And I still think Sane is the favorite. I'm not saying that Kinholtz is now the favorite, but when you read between the lines here a little bit and you look at what's going on, and you've got sort of energy behind Kinholtz right now. He's the veteran. He looks big and strong. He's been in the weight room. First guy in, last guy out. That kind of fits his mentality a little bit more right now than some of these younger guys. Not saying St. Clair and Sane aren't working their butts off. They absolutely are. And I still think Sane is the clear favorite. But I do think Lincoln Kinholtz is crawling his way into this competition a little bit. And it's one of these things about these quarterbacks that you really don't know until you have a position battle. Famously at that, not to bring up the Michigan Wolverines, talking about Ohio State here, but that famous QB battle between Drew Henson and Tom Brady. Hinson was the bigger recruit, the bigger name, more arm talent, but Brady just wouldn't quit. He just had the team behind him. He was the veteran. He just found a way to just earn his spot on the field. And of course, what he did in the National Football League is history. There are players like that. Obviously, Ohio State has their fair share of players like that as well. But it's a very common story about, the quarterback that he's not a big a prospect. He's not got all the hype and media attention, but he just gives the coaches, keeps giving them reasons to put him on the field, right? He keeps doing good things. His team loves him. He works hard. He understands the situations, good management, things like that. Great athlete, makes plays. Again, saying it's the favorite. I'm going to keep saying that. Yeah, I keep saying that. I'm going to keep mentioning that because eventually I know people are going to just crush on us in the comment section. But I tell you what, there is something very interesting brewing with Lincoln Kinholtz here. I think he has a better chance than a lot of people think to be Ohio State starting quarterback come the regular season.
Yeah, Nick, I tend to agree with you because you look at past precedent here and you see when Ryan Day joined in 2018 as the head coach coming forward from there, what kind of quarterbacks has he selected? Justin Fields, the first big guy he had for a while, a mobile, athletic style of quarterback, really hard worker. Then we get CJ Stroud, a little bit of both. He's very accurate, but also he did some wheels. He was able to make plays with his legs as well. And then we get to that crucial point of where they were trying to find the quarterback. It was a battle between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. And everyone was like, what are we going to do here? Kyle McCord starts. He's more of that, statuesque pocket passer. And it didn't work. And they left him. They went to Devin Brown at multiple points in the season because of that athleticism, because what he brings to the table there. Then Will Howard, obviously, we know that one worked out great for Ohio State Buckeyes. That was a big time move for them to be able to select him and have him run this offense, which he's, for his own right, decent athlete as well. So I think that we're hearing this, and we hear the parts of this is that Lincoln Kinholtz being that athlete and being willing to show it. I'm sure Tavian St. Clair is a great athlete, and I think he's probably a future starter for this Ohio State Buckeyes team. But it makes me wonder, is Ryan Day seeing something here? When you hear Tavian St. Clair, it kind of sounds to me like a paralysis by analysis in practice where he's just trying to stick it in there and not make plays with his legs. He wants to prove that I'm not just a runner. I can make the plays with my arms. And, that's the mentality you don't want to have. I think that was like a Lamar Jackson early on in his career. That first season when he was in the NFL, he ran all the time. And then he was like, well, I don't want to run anymore. I want to be a great passer, which he is. But still, you have to be able to use all of your gifts to elevate a team. And I think Lincoln Kinholtz is the one that I think all these guys can do it, but the one that's doing it in practice, he's putting in the work, as Ryan Day said. He's showing that he is capable of being that kind of starter. I think that there's some merit to listening to the read between the lines here, saying Lincoln Kinholtz, he may be that guy. He might be the guy at the end of everything, all said and done. If he puts in the work, he shows that he is athletic, and he shows that he is just a really great fit for this team and what Ryan Day has traditionally been looking for in the past. I think we may see Lincoln Kinholtz be the starter for this Ohio State Buckeyes team. I know they've got a lot of great options. I know Sayan seems like he's the guy right now, but I just definitely would not count out Kinholtz.
Yeah, and you brought up a good example, bringing back their last two sort of QB battle, QB situations. And we talked about it at the time, the McCord-Brown situation. And there was sort of parallels here where McCord was the better passer, the better arm talent and things like that. And Brown was the better runner, more versatile, things like that. And you did have the same sort of vibe in practice that, Brown was maybe winning over teammates and things like that. And McCord, wasn't doing poorly at all, of course, but just wasn't doing it at the same level. Ohio State obviously went to McCord and it was a disappointing season. This year they went to Will Howard, and as much as it ended extremely well, of course, with that magical postseason run, the season was not sunshine and rainbows, right? I don't need to walk you guys through it with the two disappointing losses. A lot of people were very surprised Ohio State won the whole darn thing. I think that's a credit to the infrastructure around the quarterback and the insane amount of talent and great coaching job, not necessarily the quarterback. Nothing against Will Howard. I don't think it was his leadership, running ability, or arm talent that carried Ohio State to a national title. I'm just going to be totally honest. It was the defense, it was the offensive line, running game, receivers, coaching staff, everyone, the entire organization basically led the way, allow Will Howard to get a ring, which credit to him, of course, he's got it. But I think right now Ryan Day's looking at this situation and says, am I going to repeat my mistake from a couple of years ago just because I have a quarterback with great arm talent and Sayan or St. Clair, guys who can make incredible throws? but I've got another guy here that the team just likes. He just makes plays. He converts thirds downs, manages a situation. I just won a title with a quarterback that didn't have amazing arm talent. Do I go back to the mistake of I want Kyle McCord, even though Kyle McCord's a great talent quarterback, did great things at Syracuse? Am I risking another disappointing season following that pattern? I think that's living in Ryan Day's mind right now, and it's the real question that needs to be asked. Look, there's a lot of spring ball left to go. Obviously, we're going to have summer workouts and then training camp. This QB battle is far from over, right? Sayan, I think, is still the favorite, but before spring ball, I would have said 80-20, right? Sayan versus the field. 80 Sayan, 10 St. Clair, 10 Kinholtz, right? Now it feels more like, Sayan 60, Kinholtz 35, St. Clair 5, right? There's clear minimum momentum for Kinholtz. A lot of things can shake out. A lot of things can change. But right now, this Ohio State QB battle is getting very interesting.
Yeah, Nick, and to one credit you bring up, I think I agree with you in one way, but also I think a little bit different as far as Ryan Day. I think one thing that is clear for him now is he has crossed that finish line of, he's bought himself some time, and it
Yep.
sounds crazy. He no longer is on the hot seat of, well, we got
Sure.
all this stuff. You got to go out and win national championship. He did that. So now he can kind of sit back and he can make tough decisions and not really have to worry about it. If he really likes Kinholtz, I think we're in a position where just because a guy comes in as a highly touted quarterback like Julian saying, a great 5-star prospect, a guy that's done a lot of really good hype around him, he doesn't have to make that pick anymore if he doesn't think it's necessary. But I'd keep that in mind if I'm an Ohio State fan. Is Ryan Day? He bought himself for at least like 5 years, winning national championship. You could like suck for 5 years, and I think that somebody would be like, oh well, he did win that national championship. So I think Ryan Day has bought himself the rope, the leeway to be able to go out and make the decisions he wants to make without criticism. Because obviously he knows what he's doing. He can run a successful team and he can get the job done. So I would take that into account as well when I'm thinking about what they potentially could do here. I think Ryan Day has the autonomy now to pick who he wants. So if there's someone who is maybe not the sexy pick, not the favorite pick, not the big name, I think that he's more apt to do it now. I think we saw during that McCord Devin Brown cycle, he's like, well, I really need a guy who can throw the football a little bit better. I can't pick the guy that's just, mobile, can move around, even though I've liked that guy in the past, a la Justin Fields, a little bit CJ Stroud. I need to have someone who can throw the ball down the field. We've got great receivers. We got to capitalize on it. Well, now he can do what he wants, and I think we're going to see a little bit different strategy from Ryan Day going forward now that he has a little bit of more breathing room and a little bit of autonomy to pick who he wants on this team.